One of the people who's currently under pressure is Tony Williams, because he is on the Senate candidate. He is a candidate for the Senate, and it is today that I think the nominations go in for who can run. Tony, what's the point in putting yourself forward to run for a parliament that is soon, we are told, to be abolished?
Well, one of the things I'd be saying, Anton, is it actually shouldn't be abolished. It should be severely reformed, but not abolished. I'm not going to get into the debate about kind of detailed, complex political structures, but we have a two-house system of government, a lower house and upper house, and I think we should have it. The trouble is that the way the political parties have abused the system, the Senate has just become kind of a mini Dáil. It's where you go if you're a councillor to cut your teeth on the way up. It's where you go if you're a failed TD on the way down. I mean, I would give you two words which will illustrate the bankruptcy of the current system in the Seanad, and those words are Ivor and Callally, and they explain everything that's wrong about the current Seanad.
Well, one of the people who sat on those benches was Joe McHugh, who is now a TD with Fine Gael, but was a former senator. Joe, it's your party policy that the Senate should be boarded up. Why do you want to get rid of it if Tony says it is so advantageous?
Well, our party policy is quite clear. It's to offer the people the choice, and the decision will be met within the next 12 months, where the referendum will be put to the people as to what they want to do. Obviously, it's enshrined within our constitution to have the Seanad, so it will require a constitutional referendum. So that's our commitment. And
well, your commitment was originally to get rid of it, but that requires a referendum.
It requires a referendum. So obviously, we're committed to facilitating that referendum. And the real agenda, as far as we're concerned within the party, and a lot of my new colleagues that have come in to the backbenches within government, is to have better teeth within the Dáil, and looking at serious reform in there, and that's going to be the real challenge for us now.
But Joe, as a former senator, does that mean that you look back at your time in the Senate and say, I achieved nothing?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. In fact, I was a councillor and I got an inside nomination, and obviously it was an opportunity for me to find out what happens at a national level, and I ensured that I used that position to the betterment of my own county. The only thing I would say is, if you want to look at a fairly general difference between the Dáil and the Seanad, within the Seanad you get an opportunity to speak on all live issues of the day, and in fact, if you want to look at the real difference is you can say whatever you want within the Seanad, however there's nobody listening, whereas the difference in the Dáil at the moment, you've got great difficulty getting an opportunity to speak on live issues, and everybody's listening. So that is a challenge, and I think that has led to such frustration within every level from within public opinion. So,
well, let me put that to Tony Williams. Tony, you are going to have total freedom with nobody paying any attention.
Well, I actually don't think that's true at all. You look at some of the strongest political voices we've had in recent years, people like Shane Ross, people like Mary Robinson. These are independent voices. They're different to the party political noise that you get down the Dáil. The Senate is a very, very vital place for independent thought. The trouble is the way...
Oh, come on, Tony. If Shane Ross wants to have independent thought, he can have it on an airwave or in the Sunday Independent and reach 9 million times more people than he'll reach in the Senate.
And how do you think he achieved that position of prominence? By his statements in the Senate, he has become a publicly known figure. He's become somebody whose opinions people value, and you need more people like that.
But so is David McWilliams, your own seconder, David McWilliams, and he doesn't have a Senate title in advance of his name.
Well, here's a suggestion for you, Anton. After the Senate is elected, there will be 11 positions left in the gift of the Taoiseach. Traditionally, these are given again to up-and-coming councillors, etc. Let's give one to David McWilliams. Let's give one to Garrett Fitzgerald. Let's give one to Pat Cox. Let's give one to people in the original theory of the Senate, wise outsiders who come in to give us the benefit of their knowledge.
Isn't there something very wrong, though, even as it now stands, in a situation where people can be elected by a constituency, taking your own case, made up of one university? If you're posh enough to have gone to Trinity, you can vote for you. If you're not, you can't.
That is a serious problem. In 1979, the Constitution was amended to allow the government, at a stroke of a pen, one-page legislation, to extend the university's constituency to all third-level colleges. It should have been done years ago. One thing I would say about the universities is that electing the university senators is the only election to the Oireachtas where emigrants have a vote. And that is something there's a lot of controversy about, bringing immigrants into the political process. Well, they are there at the moment. They're in the universities. Well,
they may be available in the university, but the university vote, if you look at the demographics of who attends most of the universities, it is a very exclusionary vote for the working classes, particularly the Trinity panel.
But the problem is, originally there were 6 panels: cultural, educational, labour, administrative, industrial, agricultural and university. They were meant to represent 6 particular strands of Irish society. Over the years, the universities are the only strand that's remained true. So it looks elitist because it's left there on its own. If we had a genuinely widespread representation, that you had representatives of these different sectors, it wouldn't look so elitist. The problem is what the politicians have done with it.
Joe, in your time in the Senate, did you ever see anything achieved by the institution?
Well, there were many reports. There was actually a report between 2002 and 2008. I think there's been 12 reports in all for reform. And I think Tony and myself are both in the same hymn sheet that the reform that was required back in 2002 is still relevant today. And in fact, I was one that called for that reform within the university panels, making the point that Letterkenny LYIT up in my own patch up here, the graduates from there should have a vote. So,
but go to the question, Joe, did you actually see anything achieved?
Well, the biggest frustration for me was at the time that I was blue in the face raising the issue about the unsustainability of the construction boom, referencing the fact that we had a manufacturing textile industry that wasn't sustainable in Donegal. So I kept drawing that parallel. I talked about it. It's on record. Back in 2005, before it became quite sexy to talk about the unsustainability of the construction boom with analysts or experts such as David McWilliams. The problem goes back again. The lone voice within the journalist fraternity was Jimmy Walsh from the Irish Times. He was the only man that was taking an interest in what people were saying. So maybe there were opportunities missed in terms of people listening, and obviously
that sounds like it's boiling down to you haven't seen anything achieved in it, Joe.
Well, I mean, obviously, your different bills of legislation goes through 5 different stages, and there can be constructive comment and analysis. In fact, during the Justice Bill, the time Michael McDowell came into the chamber, he was actually quite open to varied opinion from within the Seanad. So I have seen achievements, yes. However, the problem here is making it relevant to the time we're living in. We look at other countries where they've got rid of the second chamber, and we should be stealing the march in terms of what the appetite for change following the recent general election is. People want to see things done differently. We have an opportunity to do it now through a more reformed Dáil, and also through a more relevant committee system where we can scrutinise legislation.
Tony Williams, would it not be easier and simpler to give real power to the Senate, give it the capacity to veto legislation, to act as a genuine second chamber, rather than going through reforming the committee structure?
Well, I'm not actually sure that the Senate needs those powers. The Senate is not meant to be a mini Dáil. It's not meant to be another Dáil. It's meant to be a different place, a place where things can be reflected on at a slower pace, where there can be mature consideration. And Joe is saying there, I haven't seen things achieved. That's because he's measuring it by the standards of the Dáil. The Senate is a place where non-politicians come in, people with a wealth of world experience, people with a wealth of life experience, and a more reflective talk, and people listen.
It's expensive talk.
Yes, it is. It costs a lot of money to run the Senate, but you can't measure everything in money. If you're going to measure it in money, sure, we'll get rid of the Dáil and install a dictator. Sure, that'll be much cheaper.
Yeah, but there's a difference between having somewhere that represents local constituencies and say, look, we will pay people, 50 grand a year, 60 grand, 70, what is it?
Make it more representative, bring it back to the original origins, make it representative of the sectors in Irish society, stop it being a training ground for politicians.
Actually commit to having a chunk of Parliament that is only there to talk.
It has limited powers. It can delay legislation. It can muster public opinion, and it does that. It does that because instead of things just being rattled through the Dáil at pace, they have to go to a second house, and public opinion gathers behind things. And what you've suggested is certainly another way of looking at it. Then you start getting into the kind of constitutional gridlock you have in other countries where the Dáil can pass something, the Senate can overturn it, then it goes back to the Dáil, then back to the Senate. I'm not sure about that option.
Does it require salaries? Is it not something that could be done where people could do it? Because if you're saying it'll bring in a wide spectrum of other people, surely the spirit of public service should allow people to do it without salary.
Absolutely, but then what you're doing is you're then limiting it to people who can afford to do it without salary. It is a problem. Yeah, I'm not going to get into cliches about paying peanuts and getting monkeys, but you have to pay people to do this. You have to pay people to do a job. There's a controversy over what.
But you see, that's the thing, Tony. People say pay people to do a job, and one of the great factors of a job is there's an output.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure output with these people.
Senators are well paid. TDs are well paid. You judge anything by the standards of what people get paid in this country. And I won't agree with anyone who says that, it's a poorly paid job. It's not. It's a well paid job and should attract the best in society.
Joe McHugh, what was the reaction during the election to the proposal to abolish the Senate? Do you think that the referendum will pass?
Well, I think we even go back before the general election. It was the local elections, 2009, that I started picking up on the doorsteps big time, that people wanted to see something visibly and tangible done. And one of the things was they wanted to get rid of the Seanad, they wanted to reduce the number of Dáil deputies. And that has been on the back burner for a while now. So it was nearly accepted that this is going to happen. If there's an election in the morning, I would believe the people of Ireland would look for the abolishing of the Seanad. The thing that Tony talked there about getting experts and all that, I'm, a very much a back to basics type politician. The experts are out there, and if we'd been listening to the experts on the ground, the men with the Wellington boots and the boys jumping in and out of tractors, they were telling us that the construction boom wasn't sustainable back in 2004. And in relation to this talk that Tony's talking about, there's a man from my parish articulated quite recently. He said, when all's said and done, there's a lot more said than done.
That's Joe McHugh, the Fine Gael TD for Donegal North East, and Tony Williams, who is Senate nominee for the Trinity panel, which means anybody who is a Trinity graduate has a vote for you if they want to use it.
Without a doubt. And I know, Anton, we said we wouldn't say vote number one for Tony Williams, so I most certainly will not say that.
Thank you, Tony.